Hello, everyone, and welcome to the CyberWire's Research Saturday. I'm Dave Bittner, and this is our weekly conversation with researchers and analysts tracking down threats and vulnerabilities, solving some of the hard problems of protecting ourselves in a rapidly evolving cyberspace. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for listening to the CyberWire's Research Saturday podcast. Today, I want to reach out to those members of our audience who are students or serve in the military. Did you know that the CyberWire has special CyberWire Pro subscription offers just for you? Well, you do now. Because of your student or military status, that's active or reserve military status, you are able to subscribe to CyberWire Pro or CyberWire Pro Plus at a significant discount. That means you can unlock access to our focus briefings, exclusive podcasts, quarterly analyst calls, premium articles, and much more. To learn more, visit thecyberwire.com/pro and click on the Contact Us button in the academic or government and military box. That's cyberwire.com/pro and then click Contact Us in the box that applies to you and we'll hook you up. Thanks again for listening to Research Saturday.
When we picked up on the coronavirus-related attacks, we just saw a spike, which got us to a point where we wanted to make sure people are aware because the spike is pretty severe.
That's Fleming Shi. He's Chief Technology Officer at Barracuda Networks. The research we're discussing today is titled Threat Spotlight, Coronavirus-Related Phishing.
Some of the attacks seems to be focused on logistics. As you know, moving medical equipment, healthcare equipment is very important during this time. So we wanted to make sure make some noise about it, make sure people are paying attention.
Well, let's go through what you published here together. As you mentioned, you've got quite a spike here. Take us through some of the numbers. What are you tracking?
Absolutely. So this report is covering the data that we have seen from March 1st to the 23rd. And we saw, obviously hundreds of thousands of spear phishing email attacks, but we also saw about 9,000 of those it's related to COVID-19. And to numbers that we have seen in the past, it's over 600% increase, right? So, and if you look at this in the report, we also talk about sort of type of attacks or intents, right? So there's scamming, brand impersonation, and blackmailing even, and obviously some business, email compromise as well. So some of these numbers here that we have seen, we're still monitoring. So in the future, hopefully we can provide an update on this. But generally, we saw a very large increase. And you can see more than half is actually scams that's out there. Even on the recent days after the report, we've seen other type of scams related to vaccines and fake treatments and things like that. So I just wanted to cover those numbers. I believe those are very important. And also just think through the type of attacks that's involved here. They vary, right? So, but those are the numbers.
Well, let's go through and dig in. What are some of the attacks that you're seeing? Can you share some of the specifics with us?
Sure, absolutely. So there's impersonation of World Health community organizations, right? So you can see they're pretending to be, World Health Organization, and which means people are going to pay some attention to it, especially during this kind of crisis. There are a lot of fear-driven type of attacks like that. And the other type that I feel is really kind of low, how low can they go on the bad guys' side? They're using almost blackmailing, saying, hey, if you don't pay ransom, we're gonna infect your relatives and your loved ones or your friends. To me, that's really kind of touching the subject in a very aggressive way, because Marlowe's hierarchy of needs. First layer is really physiology. People are obviously scared of the virus and don't want to get sick. And if you're throwing out these kind of attacks which targets your family and friends, that is the next level of evil, right? So I think that's really important.
Yeah, I mean, it really is remarkable how they can take advantage of everyone's fear and anxiety and In many ways, that short circuits our thinking process. It keeps us from sometimes rationally thinking about the information they're sending us or the actions they're asking us to take.
Yeah. And what is really crazy as well is, well, I think somewhat predictable, but what they have done is in the email, some of these blackmails or scams don't even have any links or attachments to infect your computer or systems or your network. But it's really about scaring you to do something. They will present the Bitcoin information, and then you go wire or you get your Bitcoin as a ransom payment, right? So, to many ways, it's really kind of I would say much harder to detect because it requires a sentiment type of detection capabilities and understand the intent of the email, less about what links it leads to or attachments that could hurt your system with. So yeah, it's harder to defend, but I obviously want to point that out. Yeah, but we obviously catch them, our system catches them. But generally, I believe people need to pay attention to that. The other type of attack that was really, like I mentioned earlier, is pretty serious. It's really targeted, and maybe it's ransomware that goes into your system. One example we highlighted, it was related to a shipment. It's related to something related to logistics, right? So imagine you have to procure large amount of medical equipment. You'll be tracking certain things. This type of attacks will be effective against folks who are really trying to move goods, right? Medical goods. In this situation, it was actually Pony Stealer that sits behind a document or attachment, an email attachment, and obviously that's also very easy to fall for if you're in the midst of moving a lot of equipment to help people, right? So people are getting anxious.
Yeah, one of the ones you track here, you have an example of someone using a premise of an invoice, and it says, "Good day. With the current impact of COVID-19, the coronavirus impact, we would like to know the production delivery status of our orders with you. Kindly fill the details in the attached template for each of the given orders, which is pending to ship and send to us by tomorrow, awaiting your priority cooperation." This looks fairly run-of-the-mill, but by, I suppose, tossing in that COVID-19 element, it sort of grounds it in reality.
That's right. And really, it's designed to get people to open that file and try to fill out the form or something related to that. And if you think about this, they might be targeting the supplier. They might be targeting the folks who are actually handling the transfer of the goods, right? So all these things are designed to cause, havoc in a situation where it will slow down the response and slow down the caretaking of victims.
Yeah. Another thing you're tracking here is credential theft. Can you share some of the details of that with us?
Absolutely. So credential theft is not new, but we start to see a spike as well. What's really happening is they're impersonating your Office 365 or your SaaS apps logging infrastructure, where when you are clicking on a link to get into the app, it will actually hijack that by mimicking your login screen for your application. From there, obviously, this is hosted on the attacker's side. It's not something that's truly Office 365. They just made a copy of it, screen scrape and making it look as real as possible. From there, they will harvest your username and your credentials because you will be typing username and password if you're not careful. So in this situation, actually, the best defense is MFA. So if you always turn on your multi-factor for all the SaaS applications, regardless if you lose your password, there's a second factor to actually authenticate the user to get into the app. This is really important. So a lot of times we have seen attacks utilizing legitimate infrastructure like Google API, for example. It's infrastructure being weaponized multiple times. People actually host Office 365 login app in there, and they're harvesting. So obviously, we always report to folks at Google, but it's important to pay attention because these things do come up quite rapidly. They bring it down once they finish their campaign. So it's important to pay attention to where you're logging into. In this case, you can see the URL doesn't look normal.
Now, on the detection side of the equation here, with the types of tools that you and other providers are making available, are these attacks, are these attempts just variations on established themes? Are they still getting flagged as some of the tried and true things that you all are used to detecting, or are they new from the outset?
The ones that's really fresh or basically more effective are the ones that is using intent or fear-driven type of attacks, right? There's no links, there's no attachments, scanners that sandboxes the email or the parts of the email is not going to be able to detect there's a malicious payload, for example, right? It's really about the intent that's involved in the conversation. And some of these conversations are really, especially during the COVID-19 situation, it's fear-driven. So the people are going to naturally take action a little bit more aggressively, and based on that, requires a type of overused term, but AI-driven capabilities to actually identify whether this communication is normal or not. And this goes around whether the user have seen this emailer, or the type of conversation that's having, is that normal. And this is really done by providing a really strong social graph type of capability to understand your user community, who they communicate with, how do they communicate, and when do they communicate, and what type of topics. And from there, we were able to sift through normal emails as well as attacks, and identify the ones that's really malicious. So I think the key here is to have a solution that's additive to normal advanced threat protection type of solution you have or tool you have, right? It doesn't matter, it doesn't have to be Barracuda. You could have Microsoft, has Defender. They have different type of ATP as well, and other vendors. But you need something on top of that to really detect the intent and really the reason why this email came about, and what is being talked about. So that's really the tough part. Yeah.
And I suppose also there's an element of this that's communication with your employees, to just have awareness that these sorts of things are on the rise and they need to be extra vigilant.
You're absolutely right. And so one of the advice that being given is that we're practicing social distance between human beings, right? We should also practice social distance between your devices. The reason for that is that you may be using your personal email or personal application that's not related to work, and you need to keep that segmented or separated from your professional tools, because not every personal email has the capability that basically allows you to stop this type of threat. So that type of attack could infect your tools for your work.
Our thanks to Fleming Shi from Barracuda Networks for joining us. The research is titled Threat Spotlight: Coronavirus-Related Phishing. We'll have a link in the show notes. The CyberWire Research Saturday is proudly produced in Maryland out of the startup studios of Data Tribe, where they're co-building the next generation of cybersecurity teams and technologies. Our amazing CyberWire team working from home is Elliot Peltzman, Haru Prakash, Stefan Vaziri, Kelsey Bond, Tim Nodar, Joe Kerrigan, Carol Terrio, Ben Yellen, Nick Valecki, Gina Johnson, Bennett Moe, Chris Russell, John Petrick, Jennifer Iben, Rick Howard, Peter Kilpie, and I'm Dave Bittner. Thanks for listening.